it's quite evident if you're using Zoom. And happy day, Belinda Clarke is in the house. Wow. I can't remember when we first met. I think it might have been when you were working for Norwich Research Park, actually. And I remember you then thinking, this is one of these people who is a serious person, you know, and I don't say that about lots of people. I don't say it about myself, you know, and you got, you know, such an interesting career, I think, to remember. I think you started as a plant biologist, didn't you, in Cambridge?
I did.
Yeah,
I absolutely
and John
did.
Innes, the great John
right.
Innes Centre educated you. Yeah, that's where you got your PhD.
Yeah.
So both of those institutions very selective, you know. So brain box, in a brain box your whole life. And now you run this fascinating organisation, Agri-TechE, which I think did it used to be called Agri-Tech East and sort of more.
It did. It did. We changed the name in 2019, but you're absolutely right, Richard. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I won't say what Agri-TechE is because I expect it will become evident in your talk, Belinda. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I did have a discussion about Belinda about what we might talk about, but it wasn't a very long discussion because it seemed very obvious to both of us, by which I mean it was obvious to Belinda and I said yes. So I'm looking forward to this. I'm really, you know, a great admirer of yours. I'm very interested in what you have to say. I'm now going to shut up and disappear into the background, but my ears and mind are going to be open. Over to you, Belinda.
Thank you, Richard. Well, hello, everybody, and thank you for your time this afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. I wish we were in person. It's never quite the same online, but I'll do my best to not be too serious, as Richard said. So I guess by way of background, as Richard said, I started life as a research technician, actually, at the Sainsbury Laboratory in Norwich. I then went to university to do a degree as a so-called mature scientist in plant sciences. And then I did my PhD at the John Innes Centre. So if you dig really deep, I'm a plant scientist by background. But increasingly, I suppose there's an anecdote really that sort of describes how I do the job that I do, which was when I was very early in my career, I was talking to some farmers about the research we were doing around a disease of wheat. And I very confidently, as all academics do, said, of course, what farmers need is, and I proceeded to tell these farmers exactly what they needed. And one of them came up to me afterwards and he was so lovely. And he said, you might like to just ask farmers what they want before you give a talk telling them. And that was really quite shocking to me, that actually as academics, and remember this is way back when, I am terribly old, there wasn't really that communication between farmers and end users and the research community. And I thought that was a real problem. So I kind of made a bit of a promise to myself, the 20-year-old Belinda Clarke, that somehow I was going to try and do something to fix that. And that is the organisation that I now run. It took me a lot of years to get there, but here I am. So what I'd like to do in the next hour or so is to, I hope, leave you with a sense of excitement and passion and opportunity for Agri-Tech. And whatever your background is, I hope you can see that it has something to deliver you. Even if you are not interested in this in a professional sense, we all eat food, we all enjoy the countryside, we all want to see the planet a better place, at least I hope we do. So my presentation will be along those lines. Richard, I'm just going to ask you, is there anything you need to say or do, or shall I just launch straight in?
Zoom on. Yeah, zoom on.
Zoom on. Okay, here I go. Right, I am going to assume that Richard will let me know if you can't see those slides. But here we go.
Perfect.
What I want to talk to you about is Agri-Tech. I want to talk about technologies for 21st century food production and land management, because increasingly that's really where we are now with agriculture. So we've been on a bit of a journey. You've probably heard about the different agricultural revolutions that have happened. And over the years, agriculture and the way that we cultivate and manage the land has got much bigger. and much more efficient. So it's reduced labour costs. You can see our Egyptian friends there, it was one person, one bullock, or even two people, one bullock. And now we have tractors, we have autonomous vehicles that are actually able to operate in a sort of master and slave, which has enabled huge economies of scale. But what that has done there's been some almost unintended consequences of doing that. I won't read them all to you, but there is now a sort of a trajectory more towards precision application, moving away from the chemistry and really thinking quite hard about how we produce food and how we manage the land. Now, I hope I probably don't have to rehearse all of these drivers and challenges to you. I would imagine that they're ones that you can recognize, that as a planet, and indeed what we ask of our farmers is really to do all of these. We want great food, we want to manage pests and diseases, we want to be more efficient with our use of nitrogen fertilizer, we want to reduce the environmental footprint of agriculture. So we're kind of asking a lot and expecting a lot of our farmers, and certainly in the UK and in other places where we're also expecting farmers to deliver what we call ecosystem services. So to provide an environment that supports biodiversity, indeed increases biodiversity, that delivers clean water, clean air, healthy soils. So in addition to saving the planet, they need to do all these other things as well. And of course, my thesis here with you today is going to be that technology and innovation has a key role to play in that. Now, if you're new to the industry, and forgive me, anyone who knows this sector inside out, this will be a little bit noddy to you. That sort of the green line there is really the value chain almost of from discovery research, the kind of work that Richard and colleagues do, through to the food landing on our plate. And that looks very simple. I should say it's artificially simple because it's linear, that it doesn't always work like that. There's a general direction of travel from research through to retail, but it's highly complex. And we've seen some examples of this, certainly as a result of Brexit, through the pandemic, and also with the situation in Ukraine. There are food shortages. You possibly heard that there were shortages of some salad vegetables at the beginning of the year. I am informed that is probably going to happen again in June, because in the UK, at least, we get a lot of our fresh salad vegetables from Spain. The Spanish crop has been affected by weather. The UK crop is about 3 weeks behind at the moment because it's been so cold. We had, I think, the driest March, the wettest April, and the coldest May that we've had for a long time. So a real perfect storm there. But these are very complex supply chains that the industry collectively is having to navigate. Now, this schematic is something that we put together in, I think it was 2017. We did a reception at the House of Lords. I think it was our 4th or 5th birthday, I can't really remember. And we put together this schematic, which we thought was the farm of the future. We thought this was pretty out there at the time, that there would be robotics and drones managing and informing agriculture. There would be precision farming. There would be next generation plant breeding. Irrigators and sprays would be turned on and off automatically depending on the needs. And we thought, yeah, this is pretty far out. Actually, I would argue that certainly, I don't know where you're all dialing in from, but certainly where I am here in the heart of the Fens in Cambridgeshire, we would probably go to any farm within a 10-kilometre radius that is going to have at least 4 or 5 of these deployed already. So my point is that the rate of change and the acceleration of the industry and adoption of technology in this industry has been very rapid, excitingly rapid, but very rapid. And that poses its challenges because, you know, regulation needs to keep up with the innovation, but there has been also quite fast adoption of some of the technologies as well. Now, I'm often asked what the definition of Agri-Tech is, and we have our own definition. We don't see Agri-Tech as a sector, and I'll explain why. So if you look at those pictures in the top banner, agricultural innovation has really been built on 3 pillars. And those pillars are chemicals, synthetic fertilizers and crop protection chemicals, machinery, remember my first slide, enabling that economy of scale, and genetics. So in both plants and animals, breeding. So the chemistry, machinery and breeding has really been where most of the innovation has been happening, well, for the last 10,000 years, really. But what we're seeing now is technologies from those industries in the bottom set of photographs that is really now developing solutions to lean in to agriculture. So, for example, from the automotive industry, we now have autonomous vehicles. The shipping industry, there's a glass house in Kent where a sensor that was developed for the shipping industry has been repurposed to measure a particular physiological trait in ornamental pansies in a glass house for some nursery growers. So what we're really excited about is seeing where those different technologies come from these other sectors, construction, aerospace. I mean, Airbus is very interested in agriculture, for example, who knew? And of course, ICT, communications. So that's why we don't view it as a sector, because probably a number of these companies would not describe themselves as agri-tech companies. Amazon, for example, has a global head of agriculture. Now, I don't think any of us would describe Amazon as an agri-tech company. So we view it as a collection of enabling technologies that are leaning into agriculture. I don't have too much time to go into all of these examples, but what I wanted to do with this slide is to just whet your appetite, is to, if you have a particular favorite area of technology, there is a place for you in agriculture. Big data, getting those actionable insights from huge data sets that are now being collected from farms, using those as training sets for the artificial intelligence, machine learning, computer vision that powers the robots, the interconnectedness of devices across the farm that's connected as a so-called smart farm via the Internet of Things. And of course, Earth observation is giving us unprecedented insights into the way that a field, a farm, even a holding or a catchment area is starting to look, and enable to do some really exciting benchmarking. So I'm really happy to pick up with any of those with anyone individually, but for now I will press on. And there's a little video that I just want to show you. This is quite an old set of videos now, but I wanted to just illustrate robotics in the fields, if you like. Now this robot here has undergone a number of iterations and is looking a lot sexier. This, I must say, has been speeded up. This is technology at the University of Essex for harvesting of soft fruit. This is very much speeded up. This is the first hands-free harvesting of a cereal crop. This was developed at Harper Adams University in the UK. And that was to really demonstrate that it was possible to grow a hectare of wheat without any human setting foot in the field. And that is now being augmented to the hands-free farm with the idea of demonstrating the possibilities, the art of the possible for farmers when it comes to using autonomous vehicles and machinery and insights to manage the farm. And you can see here the last one, robots are even being used as almost workhorses on farms. And the challenge that often robotics faces is that out in the field, it's a very challenging environment. You can see that last clip shows that some of them at least can certainly cope with the muddy, challenging environment of the fens. I want to talk a little bit about controlled environment systems. We hear a lot about these, and indeed, I'm sure you have probably seen press reports that claim that yet another world's biggest vertical farm is being built somewhere. There is no doubt that vertical farming and urban farming and controlled environment production has a really important place in the agri-food value chain. I think with the cost of energy having gone up, that's posed quite a challenge to this sector, but there is definitely, for the right crop in the right place for the right market, there are huge opportunities, and you can see the kind of scale on the right there. This is the Jones Food Company, the pink lit. That's up in near Skegness, a bit further north than Scunthorpe, actually, Scunthorpe in the UK. So there's a lot of opportunity, and I think personally that there is opportunity not just for food crops, but for non-food edibles, so ingredients, or even cosmetics, or even using plants as biofactories for pharmaceuticals and vaccines. And there are a number of little companies around that are looking to develop vaccine expression in plants for human and animal use. I want to give you a couple of examples where this technology is really happening. So the top left, the orange tree, this is one of our members' tree map, and they are doing, as it says, tokenizing trees via the blockchain. So they're working with, this is us in Spain a couple of weeks ago, looking particularly at olive groves, citrus growers, almond nut growers, but also any orchard growers, and increasingly farmers who are being incentivized to plant trees for carbon sequestration, for pollinator services, and to provide habitat for biodiversity. By the tree map technology, you're able to map and monitor the performance and health and indeed survival of those trees remotely. Photonics is using their technology to really identify issues with plants before they become visible to the naked eye, and to ensure that there's really precise application of inputs, water, nutrients, whatever it might be, according to the plant's needs. And so those technologies, those plant imaging technologies, enable optimization of cultivation in a way that has not been possible before. This one I'm very excited about is the augmented reality for livestock welfare. This is a project that really is very exciting. If you imagine you are a herdsperson with a number of cattle, animals are now being treated much more individually, so they will have their own feed ration according to their needs. They might have a different medicine requirements. And so by using this headset, you can actually call up the entire history of that animal's medication, their needs, anything about, you imagine having that in a notebook, or worse, on iPad, in a messy, filthy, smelly cow byre. This enables that farmer to, through his augmented reality headset, to literally be able to do this, scroll between pages in the VR and AR headset, and he has all of that cow's information and medical details and requirements, not at his fingertips, but literally in his eyes. So very exciting technology. So I'll just tell you a little bit about the organisation that I run. I won't read this out to you, you're quite capable of reading it yourselves, but we are independent, we're not government funded. And our mission is really about this interdisciplinary approach, so bringing together lots of different sectors with their expertise, still working with the chemistry, the machinery, and the genetics, but really being able to augment what's going on farm with these other technologies. So I want to just talk to you about a number of things that we've done over the years, which I hope will sort of inspire and excite you about the kind of things going on in agriculture. And the first thing I want to talk about is a hackathon we ran. And this was, we gave the delegate, we've done a few of them, and we gave the delegates 36 hours to save the world. And this is, so on the left-hand side, this guy is an agronomist, and the right-hand side, she's a drone engineer. And they were looking at how you can repurpose a drone to be able to give actionable insights. And we had some experts on hand to advise the hackers, and I should say about 80% of them were nothing to do with agriculture at all. We just gave them the challenge. They had a tech pantry, they had access to all this cool technology, Raspberry Pis, Arduino, switches. They were doing their own coding, because it was all about science. Some people needed soil, it was all about agriculture. Some people needed some soil samples. Somebody made a Raspberry Pi with the Raspberry Pi. I'm sure if we were in person, I would hear you rolling with laughter in the aisles at that hilarious joke. And these are the winners. And they developed, and none of these people are anything to do with agriculture, and they developed a solution powered by a Raspberry Pi to be able to identify insects in the field via their unique acoustic wing beat. And that, you can imagine, if you can identify the myriad of insects coming to a crop, some of them you're going to want to attract because they're pollinators. Some of them you are going to want to deter because they are likely to be pests themselves or carrying diseases. So being able to identify those particular species was really cool. And these guys did it in 36 hours. Admittedly, it was only proof of concept, but they did do it. We also bring people together, and it's our 10th annual conference in November. And I've put this up because we always have a theme of the REAP conference. And it's our contention that the world is sort of a slightly different shape at the moment. since the pandemic and Brexit and Ukraine. It feels like the world is sort of a bit less comfortable than it was. I mean, supply chains have always been challenging, always been complicated. And again, our thesis is that we can adapt to this new world through innovation, and we can get comfortable with being uncomfortable, because I think certainly the world will not be the same as it was before all these things over the last 5 years. And so we're going to be exploring that and the potential for how technology can help agriculture settle into this new, strange, challenging, complicated world, also plagued by climate change and extreme weather events as well. Now, one of the things we really like doing is helping people walk a mile in the farmer's shoes, because that really helps inspire innovation and thinking where the opportunities could be. As you've probably been learning on your course, you want to have a solution to problems, not create solutions to problems that don't exist. And this was an event we ran last year with one of our members, G's Fresh, which is the UK's largest salad grower. And you can see there some beautiful cos lettuces. And we took a subset of our membership out into the field, and we put them into teams, and we all took it in turns to be on the lettuce harvesting rig. And that is all done manually at the moment. So each rig has about 12 people on it. Some are cutting, some are packing, some are processing, doing primary processing, getting the outer leaves off the lettuce. And we were in teams. And in my team, I think I had an IP lawyer, I had an entrepreneur, I had an agronomist, I had a banker, and I had a researcher. None of those people had ever cut lettuces before. And it was jolly hard work. And between us, we were there for, I think, about an hour. And collectively, we earned 80 pence in piecemeal work for the number of lettuces we cut. The conclusion, it's hard work. It's difficult. It's challenging. It's dirty. And it's quite dangerous because there's a lot of sharp knives around. The entrepreneurs in the group were saying, there's got to be an easier way of doing this. We can robotize this, we can automate it. Now, there are some robotics solutions underway in development for harvesting robots, but being out in the field just stimulated those creative ideas as to what we can do differently. There's got to be a better way, and it's by going out into the field and seeing firsthand those problems that you get those sparks of creativity about how to fix it. I'll just run a few images of the kinds of things we do. This was a delegation from the governor of Missouri, who brought a collection of agriculture leaders over. We take people out into the field. This is British sugar. This is where most of the UK's sugar crop that ends up in your tea comes from. We do events that help inspire people to different ways of thinking. And we took some of our members to Downing Street. And if you look very carefully, there is a certain blonde, shaggy-haired former Prime Minister in the middle of that picture who was learning about robotics in farming. And we also have been out looking at really large-scale production of some of these protected environment crops. Now, getting technology in front of farmers is really, really important. And we host an innovation hub at the Royal Norfolk Show, which is held at the end of June. And this just gives you a kind of flavour of the sorts of things that we do at the innovation hub. The BBC came, the press came. This is a lady from Farming Today. And this picture, the lady who's not me in the coloured dress is Joe Churchill, who is a former minister at DEFRA. And the gentleman on the extreme left is the Dutch ambassador. And as it so happens, the lady you can just see here in the yellow photograph, their company is based in the Netherlands. So we had the Dutch ambassador come and talk to them about the opportunities for UK-Dutch collaboration. So we try and operate not just at the technical level, but ensuring that the policy and the funding environment are as enabling as possible to get these ideas from the lab or the workshop out into the field or the glasshouse or the polytunnel. Now, the pandemic was terrible in so very many ways, but what it did for us was enabled us to learn how to deliver events as we are now remotely. And our Farmer First Innovation Group is yet another model. You can see a theme emerging here, I hope, whereby innovators can really start to just test their ideas in front of farmers. And we've got almost like a little focus group of some of the leading farmers in the UK who give their time to sit in front of the innovators and hear presentations, and in exchange they will say, do you know what, as a farmer I probably wouldn't do it like that, or that would be really helpful but on the back of a tractor instead of a quad bike, or any kind of feedback like that. So our Farmer First Innovation Group happens quarterly online. It's a safe space, it's not recorded, it's not published, for people to literally get that conversation going with end users, to ensure that they're not going to mortgage their grandmother to get a new innovation in development and then find that either it's not needed, somebody else has done it, or it's the wrong innovation. As I said earlier, a solution looking for a problem. Now I'm going to the next two slides. If you only take away one thing from what I've said to you this afternoon, I'd like it to be this. Our Early Career Innovators Forum was designed for people just like you. At Agri-TechE, we don't do schools, we don't work with children, we don't do skills development. But what we do is help people at the earlier stages of their career develop that all-important network that will, we hope, stand them in good stead for the future of their career. And what we do is we take farmers into the lab and we take scientists out into the field, and we take both of them to locations that have a mutual interest, so they can start to see what's going on. Remember that value chain I showed at the beginning of my slides, so that if you're a researcher, you don't just know about the research. If you're a farmer, you don't just know about the farming, but you actually get to see up and down that value chain to the left and right of you, so that you can understand the constraints and challenges that other people who are also all on the same journey as you, getting food from research to retail or countryside management, so that you can actually start forming that all-important network. Now, it's free to join. If you go over to our website, you can sign up to the Early Career Innovators Forum newsletter. Not all of the things are in person, some are online and remote, so geography is no limitation to your participation. Everyone is welcome, and we would very much enjoy having you as part of ESIF. And then the second thing for you to take away is that on the 14th of September, we are holding, I think it's going to be the 6th of our Ag 101 programs. So hopefully some of the things that I've told you about this afternoon have been news to you. And those who are looking to apply their skills and expertise in the industry sometimes find, well, I didn't do a degree in agriculture, so how do I get into the industry? That is not a problem. Bring your technology, bring your ideas, bring your inspiration and thinking. You can learn about agriculture really quite easily. And the first step is Ag 101, which is, it's in person in Cambridge. And the idea is to help you just start to understand the shape, the dynamic, the key people in the industry, how innovation works, how you would get ideas out into the hands of who they need to be, whether they're supply chain people, whether they're farmers, whether it's policy people. So sign up to ESIF and have a look on our website at Ag 101, and I'll give you the details, I think, in my next slide. You'll be very welcome to be there. We'd love to see you. So I think I'm going to wind up there. I'm hoping that you have some questions, and I guess Richard might pop back in. So please take a screen grab of my contact details. It would be lovely to hear from you. Head over to our website, and it would be great to hear from you. So let's have more of a chat. Okay, thank you, Richard. I'll stop sharing and shut up for a minute.
Oh, Belinda, thank you. Yeah, it was really fascinating. Yeah, I've got lots of questions actually, but let me ask the first one, which has sort of sprung to mind when you were talking. On the 11th of July, we're doing a progress meeting for all of the, not all of the students, but most of the students. So they're going to come and give a little presentation. And at the end of it, we're running a session on natural capital assets. So you know what they are. I didn't. But if I've understood it right, farms are becoming places that are more about, agriculture is part of what farmers will do in the future, but it's only part of it. They might also be operating a flood protection scheme on behalf of local government, or they might be running an agri-tourismo business, you know. Now that sort of has dangers, you know, that a farm isn't a place for producing agriculture anymore. So my question is the extent to which you think your organization will be supporting that sort of activity. I mean, do you think you'll say, it's not agriculture, we're not interested? Or have I just misunderstood this, and that really farms are, they span more sectors than one might have imagined?
No, you're totally right, Richard, that farmers have been diversifying for a number of years now into glamping or development of their farm. As you said, with the new, so since Brexit, farmers are now, there was a new Agriculture Act was passed. And you might have heard this phrase, public money for public goods. So farmers are going to be rewarded and incentivized for building their natural capital assets, whether it might be, you know, water, flood management schemes, or planting trees, or whatever it might be. And that leads to a really interesting question about what the definition is of agriculture, because and this is a very live conversation at the moment, actually, that you know, historically agriculture is, you know, using plants and animals for human benefit, really. So it does actually become surprisingly important when there are contracts being set up between landowners and those who might be wanting to do something on your farm. You know, are you prohibited from doing anything that isn't core agriculture? So this is a very live discussion with government, actually, at the moment, as to what the definition is, what comes under agriculture. Do you include forestry, for example? I would argue yes. Do you include equine? Traditionally, equine has not been considered to be agriculture. So that's a very live conversation. In terms of what Agri-TechE's scope would be, I think we're very much about the technology. I think we would, I mean, we are branching out a little bit. We've got an event in September around technology for rural crime. You can imagine you can use GPS tags to track machinery if it gets stolen, monitor lone workers, for example. They happen to be in a grain store on their own and they get locked in. So there's technology there for rural crime and safety. I think we probably wouldn't get into the tourism and glamping, because there are other organizations that advise farmers on that. We're all about the tech. And even if there was a tech to manage your glamping bookings online, I think that would probably be a little left field for us. But it is true that technology for environment and land management systems is absolutely in our wheelhouse.
Yeah, I see. I mean, I'm glad you mentioned this sort of weird segmentation of what is agriculture. I mean, one of the big supporters of the CDT is CFAS, you know, the Fisheries Institute in Lowestoft. Is it agriculture? People keep asking, you know, and then you've got people working in flower growing. Is flower growing agriculture? And it sort of bugs me a bit that the research landscape is so segmented. I mean, BBSRC.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, one of the issues for us, of course, we are sponsored by the Engineering and Physical Sciences Research Council, which is the richest of the research councils. It's got far more money than all the rest.
Yeah.
So BBSRC has this enormous call on resources. So it can't really move into tech. So I would think it's a bit awkward when a field sort of spans across research councils. No one's quite sure who should be writing the checks. So anything you can do to unlock government's rather rigid boundaries, I think, would be good.
We are having those conversations. So BBSRC, which for those of you who don't know, is the research council that funds the non-medical bio-based activities, bioscience. So that's where food and agriculture sits in there. We are having conversations. I know there's some discussions at a high level between EPSRC and BBSRC, particularly around things like vertical farming, because in a way the plants are sort of the commodity. It's the system, which is the robotics, the automation, the lighting, the environmental control, that's very much the technology side of things, supporting the plants, which just happen to be a biological organism. Also, don't forget horticulture. So the cut flowers I would probably put in horticulture's bucket, so to speak. That also sits under BBSRC's agenda. I mean, there's a long and deep conversation, probably over a bottle of wine, about the funding landscape for research in this industry and the allied industries, and also the Natural Environment Research Council. That should also be part of these conversations, given this emphasis on countryside management and natural capital. I
mean, you mentioned the Dutch. They don't have this problem, and they're very effective at
Mhm.
I mean, you might argue Dutch state hasn't been brilliant at protecting the environment, but it's certainly quite effective as a farming nation and as a horticultural nation. It's amazing, isn't it? Fishing.
Absolutely.
I mean, if you go up to Peterhead, they're all Dutch boats. I mean, they've really been, it's really an impressive sort of move into what? How many farms in our region are owned by Dutch entities? I don't know the answer to that, but I wouldn't be surprised if.
There's certainly a lot of technology from the Netherlands, particularly there's an example in King's Lynn, where there's I think three very large flour cutting, sorting and packing robots that came over from the Netherlands. And it is true. I think the way that their science and research and technology and innovation pathways are structured in the Netherlands, anyone who goes over there comes back and says, why don't we do it like that in the UK? So yeah, there's a lot to watch and learn from, certainly around Wageningen University and research. That is, and I don't mean to pick out Wageningen, but that's one that's particularly biological focused and has a lot of collaborations with the Norwich Research Park. But that whole Food Valley area is also really impressive.
Yeah. Well, a little Holland, aren't we? What did I also want to? Well, I wanted to reiterate to folks on the call and those who are listening via other means, via catch up or via one of the other channels. I've been to the REAP conference. It was a bit of an eye opener for me, actually. I'm an old school computer scientist, and therefore out of date about. I thought agriculture wasn't very innovative, you know, and I thought, I knew you're going to be horrified, and I sort of shambled along and thought, oh yeah, whatever. This will just be farmers whinging about not having enough funding, and there won't be much innovation, and that wasn't true at all. You know, it's really quite dynamic, and one way you could measure that, it's not the only way, but is to look at the age profile of the funders. There was quite a lot of young VCs in the room, which is, I mean, that's what you'd expect, right? In our sector. It wasn't, you know, although I enjoy Clarkson's farm very much, his characterization of farmers as white blokes over the age of 60, you know, that's not true in at least that was my perception, even amongst the farmers. That wasn't true.
You're quite right, and heaven knows they even let women do it as well. I mean, who'd have thought of that? You even got lady farmers. But actually, interestingly, Caleb Cooper from Clarkson's farm was at number 10 on Monday at the Farm
I noticed.
Summer Summit. So yeah, it's yes, this perception of, you know, farmers being sort of old, white, male, pale, stale. It is changing. I mean, obviously it takes time, but I mean, thank you for your kind words on REAP. And it's interesting the number of people who've come back to the family farm after they've had a career doing something completely different. You know, there's one in Norfolk, actually. She's a blackcurrant grower, and she's one of a handful that grow for Ribena. She went and had a career in PR in the city, and she came back to the farm and just looked around and went, right, I don't know anything about how we do this. There must be some technology that can help. So she came in with a completely open mind, no sort of let's do it this way because dad and granddad did it that way. It's looking at it completely afresh with a technology enabled approach, which is really exciting to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, yeah, more power to your elbow, really. I thought it was a really excellent event, and I didn't know about the other two things that you were talking about, Ag 101 and was it the Innovators Forum you called it?
Early Career Innovators Forum.
Oh, right, yeah. And so would our students be suitable for both of those, do you think?
Absolutely, yeah.
Right. And who pay? I mean, I think I saw scholarships and various other things mentioned.
Yeah.
They have some budget to do this sort of thing, but you're making it affordable, are you?
We are making it affordable. There is a student bursary to attend REAP. If you apply for that, we haven't actually launched that yet. We're going to launch REAP at the beginning of June, which is only 10-12 days away. So we're going to be launching it there, and then we're going to be having for Ag 101. What we will do is that we will do a deal for those of you who are on this call, a part of the AgriFoRwArdS program, and we will do, if you go via Richard, we will do a discount for you for those of you that are on AgriFoRwArdS.
So I think we're all in one room on the 11th of July, so it would be okay for me to promote it then, is that right?
Please do.
Yeah, super. Yeah. Right, somewhat to my amazement, I can't see any questions, and I was just chatting with Joanna, who cannot see any, but oh, look, Thomas has popped up.
Yeah, I think I would have a question. Thank you, first of all, for the nice overview about all what's going on in the UK, and it's amazing. It's a lot, and I was wondering, I think we offer a lot of technology, but we realize that we still, let's say, have ways to go when it comes to acceptance of some of the technologies. When it comes to GNSS, automatic steering systems, and then all that, that is now mainstream and is totally accepted. But a lot of other technologies, for some of them, it needs also a lot of agronomic knowledge. And we say, as John Deere, that's not our core business. And we think that is something other service providers needs to do, like satellite-based fertilizer applications or recommendations or things where you really need good agronomic knowledge. And typically these services are offered also either by large companies like whatever BASF or Bayer, where sometimes the customers are still a little shy and say they just want to sell their product, or more by startups, where typically what they are missing is the channel, and then they expect also payments per hectare or service. It's more a service-oriented business. And at least when I was still in the operational sales and marketing group 10, 15 years ago, farmers were not really very conservative, and all these services, they were cautious, and they even didn't want to pay for such a service. Has that changed in the meantime? I realized that more and more farmers are using these new services from startups, etc. But it's still, when it comes to charging the customer for that service, they still are very reluctant, or they still, at least it has to be somehow, we have to explain them that it's a value-based service and we provide value, and part of that value that we provide, we should also, or that the service provider should get. But sometimes it's so difficult to quantify that value. So do you see an increase in willingness to at least try these new services and to adopt variable rate applications? We know that more and more farmers are doing that, but the big majority is still not doing it.
Yeah, gosh, that's a great question, Thomas. There's a lot in there. The return on investment question is a thorny one that we are still trying to help the industry get to grips with. So there are a number of agricultural economists at various universities in the UK. I have to say they don't seem to be doing too much at the sort of individual farm level. I think a lot of that ends up in the hands of the agricultural business advisors, who are increasingly delivering government-funded services to help farmers transition as we having left the EU into the new supported regime around ecosystem services. I think where there is a clear return on investment, and that could be from peer-to-peer learning, hearing from other farmers, I think farmers actually are quite willing to adopt. They just, like, in any industry where you get, as we say, 50 chances in your career to get it right if you're growing an annual crop, you've got to be pretty sure on your decision.
Yeah.
We've also seen, and I would flag this up to any of the students that go on to become entrepreneurs, some slightly tactless and clumsy approaches to farmers by the startups, inviting the farmers to conduct trials with them. So in a way, the farmers are kind of investing a bit of sweat equity into the company. They're giving them access to a field. They might be doing some management activities on that field. The trials all look great. And then what the startups do is go to that farmer and say, brilliant, we've got this product now, it really works. Will you be our first customer? And then proceed to charge them full price for it. And that really jars. And we've had to spend a lot of time with the startups saying, please view these farmers as co-development partners, don't use them to develop your proof of concept through to a viable product, and then go and charge them as your first customers the full price. That just sort of jars a little bit. And I'm sure you used to find the same, Thomas. It's never the technology that's the limiting step. It's always the business model and the almost the social science, the psychology behind understanding buying decisions and things like that, that tends to be the sticking point. So I suppose the short answer is it's better than it was, could still be better.
Yeah, I still recall when we introduced automatic steering systems and we said, but you have to pay a yearly fee for the correction, the signal, satellite correction data, so that you have this high accuracy level. There was always a reluctancy, and they say, okay, you should add it already to the sales price for the first 5 or 10 years or whatever. We don't want to pay every year. We want to come back to you, etc. But in that case, we somehow could manage that, because sometimes they wanted to finance it, and then we said, okay, here's the complete price, including 10 years of service. So that's easier when you sell hard iron. But if you only sell the service, it's sometimes more difficult. But I also realized that it's the willingness to try things out definitely has grown a lot. And that's also, I think, due to the help what your organization is doing by educating and informing farmers about all the technologies which are available. So it's good for the industry, for us, and for our competitors that you are doing that, and we really appreciate that. But we realize we still have ways to go. We need to do a better job to train also our dealers, even if we have now we think have made a lot of progress and can also talk a little bit agronomy in the meantime. Because when you want to explain the farmer why you need a protein sensor on a combine harvester or whatever, that it even helps for the calculation of the best nitrogen fertilization eventually for next year, then you need to have some knowledge about agronomy. And that takes a while, but I think we are making progress.
Definitely, that's a very interesting reflection. What we're starting to see is the agronomists, particularly the independent ones, are starting to move into the space of the business advisors and even some machinery experts. Everybody wants to be the one-stop shop. You can imagine that agronomists also, who particularly have been trained around chemistry, the direction of travel for the industry is probably moving a bit more towards the use of biologicals as well. And there really hasn't been enough research on the use of biologicals and how they're going to be applied. If you've got cells, whether they're bacterial cells or whatever they might be, fungal cells, if you put them through a sprayer, the shear force is likely to perhaps destabilize them, or if you're putting beneficial insect eggs onto a field, whatever it might be. And suddenly everybody needs to sort of be on at least nodding acquaintance with, as I said, people up and down the value chain to you, and everyone sort of needing to be a bit of an expert in a number of areas. So it's a very exciting transition time. And we're seeing farms are appointing data scientists as employees, for example. So people who know nothing about agriculture, and they don't need to, because data is data, right? But gradually they start to learn a bit more about the practice of agriculture and a bit of agronomy and how that works. So it's an incredible time to be in the industry, I think. It really is.
And Belinda, so I was thinking while the two of you were sort of communing, because I don't come from an agricultural background. I mean, I've done a number of startup businesses, and I don't really ever remember discussing cost very much in any of my businesses. Revenue, yeah, my God, we talked about potential customers and revenue.
Nice hockey stick.
We're top line. Most IT businesses are top line driven. They're trying to grow fast, break things, generate revenues quickly. And the reason for that is because they're innovating new product. And cost is whatever, you know, and it's not significant anyway. Farmers are quite different. You know, they're very, very focused on cost.
Yeah.
And their innovation, this is where I may have misunderstood completely, so do correct me. But if you're a potato farmer, you see your job to grow potatoes. You don't see your job is to think, well, potatoes aren't making any money, I'll do something else. You know, I'll grow wasabi or something, you know. Am I right there? You know, that's why there's a culture clash, because people like me say, I'm not very good at analyzing cost. I'm not very interested in it. My upbringing has been innovate, drive revenues, don't worry about cost. Farmers don't innovate. The consumer knows what they want. My job is to provide it. I'm prepared to innovate to reduce cost. I'm prepared to innovate to get a better ROI, but I'm not going to innovate my product. Now, have I completely misunderstood?
Hold my beer.
Okay.
So our farmers, I think, are very much innovators, and not just around cost, although you're right, that is a big driver. Reducing cost of production. Well, first of all, understanding unit cost of production has traditionally been quite a challenge. I think increasingly the startups are having to be challenged not by their investors, but by potential end users. You know, I talk to startups and say, well, what kind of price are you thinking this is going to come in on? And they'll say, oh, you know, £10 an acre. And they want to sell to wheat farmers. Well, wheat prices have been quite good, but wheat prices have also been on the floor, ditto potatoes. And if you're charging £10 an acre, and sometimes farmers are only making, you know, £20 an acre profit, actually, you know, that year that doesn't work. And that's one of the real challenges for the industry, is that potatoes particularly volatile. Wheat, you know, commodity prices do go up and down. So that does make it.
So get out of potatoes. Get out of potatoes.
Well, an advisor I work with, he says if you grow potatoes over 10 years, sometimes you'll make a lot of money, sometimes you'll lose a lot of money, and after 10 years you'll probably break even. I don't know if you've got a view on that, Thomas, on potatoes. But,
I mean, that's not a business, my friends. That's just gambling.
That's nature. So
it's gambling.
A lot.
Stop doing it. Do something else.
Yeah, it's still you depend on the weather and on other circumstances that you cannot control. But farmers are not, I think, okay, on the one hand side, they have some limitations like crop rotation. You cannot easily replace one crop by the other. But we see when you see worldwide how crop prices drive the acreage of different crops. So when price for corn goes down and soybeans go up on a worldwide basis, that immediately drives lower acreage of corn and higher acreage of soybeans. So they look as much as they can, but they have a lot of, I think they have a lot of borders that they need, so they cannot easily completely change what they have done before. Yeah. You need sometimes special machinery to grow the crops, etc., etc.
Yeah, I think that's so. Mother Nature intervenes to some extent, right? Yeah, you cannot just turn on a penny. Hey, now look, I missed somebody. Zhumin has got his hand up, and Oh,
hello, Rachel.
Hi, Zhumin. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, sorry, I missed you. I'll ask you a question.
Yeah, I have a question. So actually, my question is not about agriculture. It's about you organized Agri-TechE. So I wonder the TechE website you organized the start from 2014. So it's almost 9 years or 10 years. I'm very wondered how you survived and how you expanded your business, especially for your financial and staff number. I probably at the start years, first year or second years, you probably have some financial problems. So I'm very interested in
Okay.
after 10 years. Can you introduce a little bit about this? How and in the future, do you think is it possible to expand it your teams more? Yeah.
Okay, great question. Thank you. So yeah, so our business model is very simple. I'm not as clever as Richard made me out to be at the beginning of the talk. So it's not rocket science. Our business model, we get our money from membership subscription and from a bit of event revenue. So the REAP conference we get some money from, for example, and a little bit of sponsorship. And that is it. We're not for profit. We don't have any government funding. And I quite like that because, well, I mean, I'd love somebody to give me a load of money from the government, but it usually comes with strings attached. So we grow when we've got enough money to employ another person. We've grown organically. To your question as to how did we start, we had a little bit of charitable money to get us started, and my job was to make us financially sustainable and independent, which we were. We started in the March, launched in the June, and were revenue generating by the November. And we had double-digit growth from then every year until 2020. We had a bit of a decline last year with the pandemic and fallout from that, and we've grown again this year.
All right.
Does that answer your question, Jimin?
Yes, thank you very much.
Oh, good way to end, actually, because we're almost on our
perfect timing.
On our time limit. Yeah. So, Belinda, thank you very much for giving up your time. If anyone's listening and they want, Belinda is always a good person to go to if you don't know who to talk to, because she knows everyone from the Prime Minister downwards. So always good to talk to her, and it's good to listen as well, which I enjoyed your talk very much.
Well, thank you, and the door is always open to anybody, whether they're on this call or not. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, and there are people who will watch this on catch up, and for reasons I don't understand, the people also watching this by other routes which aren't evident on the audience list. But so thank you for all of that, and well, have a good weekend, everyone, and enjoy. Thanks, Belinda.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.